So I want you to think about the most universally successful person in your office right now. The one who always seems to get the promotion, the one the executives actually listen to, or, the one who somehow just glides through layoffs totally untouched.
We all know that person.
Exactly. Now, if you really look closely at what they do all day, statistically, they're probably doing less actual heads-down work than you are.
Oh, almost certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
But they are playing this invisible, high-stakes game that you might not even realize you opted into.
Because it's completely submerged.
Yes. You see the polite smiles, the casual Friday chatter, the standard meeting agendas. But that's just the front-end user interface.
That's a great way to put it.
Underneath all of that, there is a back-end code running every single interaction, sorting who has leverage, who is vulnerable, and who is quietly taking control.
It's entirely structural, yet completely unseen by most people navigating it. We tend to focus on the content of our conversations, completely missing the undercurrent of leverage that, dictates how those conversations are actually received.
And decoding that undercurrent is our mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling apart a massive stack of structural notes and psychological frameworks derived from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Which is a fascinating, if somewhat controversial text.
Very controversial. But we are stripping away the historical anecdotes about, 16th century courtiers and ancient kings.
Right, no powdered wigs today.
Exactly. We are translating these incredibly intense, sometimes uncomfortable themes like strategic silence, engineering respect, emotional control into a raw, mechanical lens for viewing the modern professional and social world you navigate every single day.
Because when you remove the velvet robes and the royal courts from these concepts, what you are left with is just human behavioral mechanics.
Yeah.
It forces us to look past the idealized, romanticized version of how we wish human beings interact.
Right, the way we think it should work.
Exactly. And stare directly at the raw circuitry of how we actually function under pressure, under ambition, and insecurity.
Okay, let me start with a premise, and I want you to tell me if I'm interpreting this source material correctly.
Go for it.
If human interaction is essentially this complex back-end system of leverage and influence, is the only real difference between us simply who realizes they have administrative access? I mean, is it just about who knows the game is running?
Honestly, yes. That is the fundamental dividing line.
Really, just awareness.
Just awareness. The people who understand these mechanics aren't necessarily possessed of higher IQs.
Right.
And they certainly aren't always the hardest workers.
Mm.
But they possess a crucial, almost cold, situational awareness.
They see the board.
They see the structural dynamics. They recognize that every interaction, from a casual hallway chat to a formal performance review, has a current of influence.
And if you don't see the current?
When you are aware of that current, you can steer the boat. When you aren't, you just get swept downstream, usually while, patting yourself on the back for swimming so well.
Wow. Okay, I feel like there's going to be a massive wall of resistance to this from anyone listening.
Sure.
Honestly, I feel it myself. It feels cynical.
It does feel cynical at first glance.
Because we are practically raised from birth to believe in a pure meritocracy. The script we're handed is, be a good person, do great work, keep your nose clean, and the universe will reward you.
Right, the whole just keep your head down philosophy.
Yeah. It's incredibly tempting to say, I refuse to play these power games. I'm just living my life authentically.
That resistance makes perfect sense.
Right.
We are heavily conditioned to view the very concept of power as toxic, dirty, or, reserved for corrupt politicians and ruthless corporate raiders.
Right. It feels like a dirty word.
It does. We tell ourselves that by ignoring power dynamics, we are claiming the moral high ground.
Yeah.
But let's look at the actual definition of power in this context. It isn't a crown. It isn't a corner office. Power is simply the degree of agency and control you have over your own circumstances and your ability to influence the environment around you.
So it's just physics.
It's the physics of human interaction, exactly.
So let's test that against a real-world scenario. Let's take the listener who says, look, I put my headphones on, I crush my spreadsheets, I write flawless code, I don't gossip, and I go home at 5.
The ideal employee.
Right. They deliver massive value. They are actively trying to opt out of the office politics. What happens to them? Are they actually safe?
They are arguably in the most dangerous position on the entire board.
Wait, how? They weren't bothering anyone.
Because avoiding the mechanics of human behavior doesn't grant you immunity from them.
It doesn't.
No, it just makes you incredibly vulnerable. You cannot opt out of human nature by simply ignoring it.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Think about that good worker with the headphones on. They're producing phenomenal results, operating under the assumption that the work will speak for itself.
Which is what we're all taught.
We are. But work is inanimate. It doesn't speak.
Oh, right.
People speak.
Mm-hmm.
And while they are quietly grinding away, someone else, someone with that administrative access we talked about, is actively framing the narrative around that work.
Oh, wow.
They are presenting it in the meetings, claiming the associative credit, building alliances with the executives.
And positioning themselves as the leader who, quote unquote, oversaw the project.
Exactly.
So by putting your head down, you are essentially generating raw material for someone else to build their empire with.
You are surrendering your agency. Avoiding the game is a passive strategy, but it is still a strategy.
A really bad one.
One that leaves your fate entirely in the hands of the ambitious. And historically and practically, the ambitious do not prioritize the quiet, humble worker over their own advancement.
Yeah, they just use them as a stepping stone.
Exactly. If you don't understand the dynamics of power, you will inevitably be maneuvered by someone who does.
That is jarring. It's like realizing you've been standing in the middle of a busy intersection while staring at your phone, assuming the cars will just naturally route around you because you're a good person.
That's a very vivid, very accurate analogy.
It forces a mindset shift. If we accept that this current is inescapable, we have to understand the tools used to navigate it. And looking through these frameworks, the most potent weapons aren't what I expected.
What did you expect?
I don't know, like aggressive posturing or talking the loudest in the room, but it's actually about the things you withhold.
Yes.
I want to dig into the mechanics of silence and emotional control because the text frames them as incredibly dangerous.
The directive to always say less than necessary is arguably the most difficult psychological maneuver to master.
Why is it so hard?
Because human beings are biologically, evolutionarily wired for social cohesion.
Yeah.
We use speech to connect, to soothe, to explain ourselves,
Right.
and most importantly, to seek validation. We have a visceral biological aversion to conversational vacuums.
We really do. If
Yeah.
there's a solid, 4 seconds of dead air on a phone call, my brain completely short circuits.
Exactly.
I will start babbling about the weather, my dog, literally anything to fill the space.
And that panic, that urge to fill the void, is the exact mechanism where power changes hands.
Wait, really? The panic itself?
Yes. When you talk past the point of necessity, you are leaking data.
Mm.
Let's look at how this plays out mechanically in a modern setting.
Okay.
Imagine a high-pressure salary negotiation. Or maybe you're a vendor pitching a massive contract to a client.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The amateur comes in with a heavily rehearsed, nervous energy. They lay out their number and immediately follow it up with all their justifications, their demands, their underlying reasons.
Because they want to prove they deserve it.
Right. And the strategist on the other side of the table simply looks at them, maintains eye contact, and says absolutely nothing.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, though, because I'm thinking about how this practically works. If I'm on a Zoom call with my boss and he asks me why a project is delayed and I just stare at him in total silence, he's not going to think I'm a mastermind.
No, he won't.
Right, he's going to ask if my Wi-Fi froze or he's going to fire me. How is silence actually applied without just looking incompetent?
That's a crucial distinction. We aren't talking about mutism or refusing to answer direct questions.
Okay.
We are talking about the complete absence of over-explaining. In your Zoom example, the amateur says, the project is delayed because marketing didn't get us the assets. And I know I should have followed up earlier, but my inbox was crazy.
And we can try to work the weekend to fix it?
Yes, they offer excuses, assign blame, and volunteer free labor all in one breath.
Just to fill the silence?
Exactly. But the strategist says the project is delayed to Thursday due to a bottleneck in asset delivery from marketing. We are currently rerouting the workflow to accommodate.
And then...
Full stop. Silence.
Oh, I see the difference. You answer the functional question, and then you just stop. You build a wall at the end of the sentence.
Yes. And going back to the salary negotiation, let's say you ask for a 20% bump.
Okay.
You state the number, you stop. The silence stretches.
That sounds terrifying.
It is for the amateur on the other side. They feel the crushing weight of that silence. It feels like judgment. It feels like a rejection they have to fix.
So what do?
So to relieve their own internal biological anxiety, They start negotiating against themselves.
Oh, wow.
They say, well, we can't do 20, but I guess we could do 15 if we restructure your bonus.
Without you saying a word.
The person who maintained the silence didn't have to make a single counterargument. They just created a void and watched the other person fall into it out of pure discomfort.
I love how mechanical this is. It's like you become a psychological mirror.
Exactly.
If you don't react, if you don't offer any extra comforting words, you become this flat, blank surface.
A void.
Yeah, and because the other person's brain can't handle the lack of input, they have no choice but to start projecting their own hidden anxieties and insecurities right onto that surface.
That's entirely it.
You aren't defeating them. They are literally defeating themselves, and you are just sitting there observing the process.
The psychological mirror is a perfect way to conceptualize it.
Hmm.
And this leads directly into why emotional control is the foundation of that mirror.
Right, because if you're freaking out internally, the mirror breaks.
Exactly. If silence is the weapon, emotional control is the armor. Emotions are essentially highly broadcasted data points about your internal state.
They give away your position.
Yes. If you display sudden anger, you are handing the room a manual on exactly what hurts your ego.
That makes sense.
If you show excessive, unbridled relief when a deal goes through, you are telling the other side that you were desperate, which they will remember for the next negotiation.
So it's about not broadcasting your source code. You want to be a closed network.
Correct. By maintaining a stoic, unreadable demeanor, you deny the people around you the behavioral data they need to calculate their next move against you.
You become unpredictable because you are unreadable. All right, so silence and emotional control form this impenetrable defensive perimeter, but we also need to talk about how this game is played on offense, which is where it gets interesting. Because people are constantly exerting influence over us, and it rarely looks like a mob boss making demands.
Yeah.
It's usually invisible.
It's very subtle.
So let's shift gears and look at the mechanics of everyday manipulation, respect, and confidence. The notes here frame respect in a very cold, economic way.
It is entirely economic.
Yeah.
One of the core psychological realities we have to face is that respect is never freely given by a group.
Right.
And it is impossible to demand. If you demand respect, you instantly look weak. Respect has to be engineered.
How do you engineer it?
The primary mechanism for engineering it is the strict management of your presence versus your absence. It is the law of scarcity applied to human psychology.
Okay, break down the mechanism of that. How does scarcity actually generate respect in a modern office or like a friend group?
Think about the underlying physics of value. Things that are abundant and easily accessible are cheap. Things that are rare and difficult to attain are valuable. If you are constantly available, if you are the person who replies to every Slack message within 12 seconds,
Guilty.
if you are always eager to please and present at every single optional meeting, your perceived value inherently drops. You become a psychological commodity.
You are part of the furniture.
Exactly. You're always there, so no one values you being there.
That hits a little close to home for the people pleasers listening.
Now, contrast that with a specific person in your professional or social circle. We all know this archetype.
Okay, boo.
They are highly competent, they produce great work, but they are slightly aloof. They aren't at every after-work happy hour. They take hours to respond to non-urgent messages.
And they leave meetings exactly when they are scheduled to end.
Yes.
I know exactly who you mean. And here's the crazy part. When that person finally does show up to the happy hour, or when they actually drop a compliment on your work, it feels like this massive, disproportionate victory.
Right.
You feel special just because they engaged with you.
Exactly. But let's look at why it feels like a victory. They didn't bully you into respecting them. They didn't demand you care about their opinion.
They just weren't around as much.
They simply withdrew their presence just enough to create an aura of exclusivity. They manufactured scarcity.
Wow.
By being less available, they engineered a dynamic where everyone else in the ecosystem is subtly craving their approval. You find yourself working harder to impress them, and you genuinely believe it was entirely your own idea to do so.
Which brings us right to the concept of manipulation.
Yeah.
And I want to be careful here because manipulation is a heavily loaded word.
It is.
When we hear it, we picture a sociopath lying to people's faces or running a massive con. But what the source material describes is much more mundane and, frankly, much more effective.
True manipulation is rarely about overt deception. It is about shifting context.
Shifting context.
It's what behavioral economists call choice architecture. It is the quiet art of arranging the environment, the options, and the flow of information so that people willingly take the path you want them to take.
All while feeling totally autonomous.
Precisely. You aren't forcing someone down a hallway. You're just quietly locking all the other doors and making the one remaining open door look incredibly inviting.
Give me a concrete example of this in action. How does choice architecture play out on a random Tuesday at the office?
Let's say a manager needs an employee to work over the weekend to finish a massive client presentation.
Okay.
The amateur manager uses blunt force. They say, I need you to come in on Saturday to finish this.
Which is going to breed immediate resentment.
Right. It creates pushback and damages the relationship. The strategist manager uses choice architecture. They sit down with the employee on Thursday and say, we have a situation with the big client presentation on Monday.
Okay, setting the stage.
Right. And they say, I'm looking at the draft, and we have two options. Option A is we ship it as is tomorrow, but honestly, it's missing that final polish, and we risk losing the account, which hits our department's bonus pool.
Oh, making the alternative look terrible.
Exactly. Then they say, option B is we both pull a few hours this weekend, refine the data, blow the client away, and solidify our standing for Q3. It's your project, so it's your call. I support you either way.
Wow. That is brilliant and deeply insidious.
Because the manager didn't order the employee to do anything.
Right. They gave them a quote-unquote choice. But one option is framed as disastrous to everyone's financial well-being, and the other is framed as heroic and collaborative.
And which one will they choose?
The employee is going to choose to work the weekend, and they're going to feel like they are stepping up as a leader rather than being forced into weekend labor.
And that is the invisible power of shifting the context. The manager got exactly what they wanted, preserved the relationship, and actually increased the employee's internal motivation, all through the mechanics of framing.
Okay, I have to push back here. Hard.
Go ahead.
Because listening to this, understanding how to engineer scarcity to make your friends crave your approval, or architecting choices so your employees manipulate themselves, isn't this inherently sociopathic?
It's a common criticism.
Right. If you start viewing your colleagues, your friends, maybe even your partner through this lens, aren't you just treating the human beings in your life like vending machines?
Where you press the right psychological buttons to get the soda you want.
Exactly. Where is the morality in this?
It is a profound, necessary question, and it is the exact reason this source material makes people so uncomfortable. But we have to separate the tool from the intent.
Okay, how so?
Understanding the mechanics of human behavior is fundamentally neutral. It is the study of human physics. Gravity isn't evil for pulling an airplane out of the sky. It is simply a force.
Okay, I follow that.
Scarcity-generating desire is a force. People's biological discomfort with silence is a force. These psychological dynamics exist and operate on you every single day, whether you acknowledge them or not.
So the knowledge itself isn't the problem, it's the application.
Precisely. You do not have to use choice architecture to exploit your team, and you shouldn't use calculated scarcity to emotionally torture your spouse.
Please don't do that.
Right. But, and this is the critical takeaway, recognizing these tactics is the only reliable defense mechanism you have against them.
Ah, so it's about not being a victim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't understand how scarcity generates a false sense of respect, you will spend your entire career desperately chasing the approval of aloof, narcissistic bosses.
Yeah.
If you don't understand how silence extracts information, you will talk yourself out of every salary increase you ever try to negotiate. You study the mechanics not to become a cartoon villain, but to stop walking through the world as an easy, predictable target.
You have to learn the back-end code so you can recognize when someone is running an algorithm on you.
Okay.
That reframes it completely. It removes the moral panic and replaces it with sheer situational awareness. You aren't becoming a bad person. You are just turning the lights on in the room.
And turning the lights on is what separates the strategist from the amateur.
Right.
The amateur operates purely on their own emotions, projecting an assumption of straightforward goodwill onto everyone else. The strategist observes the environment, recognizes the invisible leverage points, understands why people are truly acting the way they are, and moves with deliberate intention.
So synthesizing all of this for you listening, the biggest takeaway is that power dynamics are the water we swim in.
They absolutely are.
They aren't reserved for billionaires or politicians. They are happening right now in your Slack channels, your family group chats, and your Monday stand-up meetings.
Every single day.
And choosing not to play is just choosing to let someone else dictate your outcome. We've decoded how strategic silence can completely unravel an opponent by simply giving your own anxiety a blank canvas to project onto.
The psychological mirror.
Yes. And we've seen how everyday influence, whether it's engineering respect through selective absence or managing people through choice architecture, is constantly running in the background of our lives.
It is a heavy realization to carry.
It really is.
And honestly, there is a psychological weight to adopting this strategy. Because once you put this lens on, once you truly understand the mechanical architecture of human behavior, you cannot unsee it.
There's no going back.
You can never go back to viewing a casual conversation or a sudden promotion with total naive innocence. You will always hear the subtext.
Yeah.
You will instantly notice who is talking too much in a meeting, who is deliberately withholding their presence, and who is framing the choices. You are forever burdened with the knowledge of how the machine actually works.
Which leaves me with a final lingering question. Something for you to mull over as you step back into your office, your relationships, and your life today.
It's the ultimate question.
If navigating this world effectively requires you to cultivate absolute emotional armor, to treat silence as a tactical weapon, and to constantly analyze the hidden leverage in every interaction, what happens when the game is supposed to end? When you finally go home, close the door, and sit with yourself, if you spend your entire life perfectly managing the power dynamics around you, do you eventually lose the ability to just be human?